Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz, Saturday, August 5th. Jake Paul's been talking about it on all his social medias. Same with Nate Diaz. Same with even Ariel Helwani. This fight is more than official. It's happening. And it's happening on the Zone pay-per-view, which is kind of weird considering Eddie Hearn was suing Jake Paul for $100 million just a couple months back. Don't know what's going on there, but all we know is that Jake Paul is fighting on the Zone pay-per-view, and he's fighting against Nate Diaz. This is the fight that we all saw coming. This is just the fight that we all knew was going to happen eventually down the line for the longest time. And especially since Nate Diaz retired, oh yeah, Jake Paul is for sure going to fight Nate Diaz because now he's a retired welterweight. So now the fight's got to happen. Now it's got to happen, and it's happening. So Jake Paul, like this guy said down here, bro loses to the only boxer he's ever fought and goes back to fighting non-boxers. And yeah, that's just kind of the reality of the situation here. The other fighter that Jake Paul was rumored to fight, I don't know, I forgot his name, but he was he had a boxing record of like 33 and 20 something, 35 and 25 or something. I don't know, but he was a very experienced fighter. Had a lot of losses, but also had a lot of wins and a lot of experience. Those fights tend to be the tougher fights. That fight, I like that fight better for Jake Paul. But if we're talking about money, name value, and a serious comeback fight, Nate Diaz realistically is the way to go. It's kind of like Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington. The Bilal Muhammad fight makes more sense, but the Colby Covington fight, it's going to bring more money, more eyeballs, and more people are going to tune in to watch that. More people are going to care, and it's a fight that you can put on a pay-per-view main event. So fair enough for Jake Paul for getting this fight, but also couldn't have been against anybody else with a relatively big name. I get you need that comeback fight, but this isn't new to us. We've seen this happen before. It's a very common theme in Jake Paul's career, and this is very common knowledge, whether it's Ben Askren, Tyron Woodley, Anderson Silva, and now Nate Diaz, and even Nate Robinson, I guess. It's just a bunch of guys that are just retired in their sports. Even Nate Robinson was retired in basketball. So you can talk about, okay, but these guys, maybe not Nate Robinson, but, Askren, Woodley, Nate Diaz, and Silva, they're still fighters. They still competed in MMA, so they should do good. They should do good in boxing, right? Well, it's also got to happen. No, what am I saying? We also got to factor in the backgrounds. Jake Paul, his entire life right now has revolved around boxing. Boxing. That's how it is for the past few years as well. It's just straight boxing, trying to become the best in the world at boxing. For these guys, Ben Askren, Tyron Woodley, Nate Diaz, Anderson Silva, you want to know what their life has revolved around for those few years? Retirement. Retiring. Being a free agent, being retired, not having to worry about competing against the best in the world, not having to train those hard rounds. None of that. And also, before that, you could talk about, but in their primes, they were pretty crazy too. Okay, let's talk about how they were brought up into MMA. What were their backgrounds in MMA? How did they win fights in MMA? Ben Askren, pure wrestler, terrible striker. Okay. Everybody thought he was going to beat Jake Paul. Why? I don't know why, but just because of the experience, I guess. Terrible striker. Did not beat Jake Paul, as we all know. Okay, we can move on to Woodley, who is okay in his punches. He's got good power. We know that. He rocked Jake Paul in that first fight. But what is he? What is he known for? What's his background? What is he gifted in? What's his talent? What is his martial art? Wrestling. Sure, he's a better striker than Ben Askren. Nobody will disagree with me on that. But he's a wrestler. Now, with Anderson Silva, for example, okay, he's a striker. He's got much better work with his punches, with evading shots. We saw that in the Jake Paul fight. He's very good at evading shots. He was able to land those shots as well. And he did actually have a boxing record. It's not like that was his debut or anything like that. He did have 4 boxing fights before that. He had 3 wins and 1 loss. His last win was against Tito Ortiz, who was also retired. But then again, they're fighting their kind of level. For Tito Ortiz, the retired Tito Ortiz to fight the retired Anderson Silva, it makes sense. For Jake Paul to fight the retired Nate Diaz, the active boxer Jake Paul to fight the retired Nate Diaz. Is it really the best matchup? Not really, but is it going to bring money? Am I going to watch it? Are you going to watch it? Yes. Yes, you are. Yes, I am. Are you going to... Okay, maybe you're not going to watch it. Are you going to care about it? Are you going to want to see who wins in the end? Are you going to want to see it? Find out? Yes. Yes, you are. For sure you are. For sure I am too. And when we talk about, okay, wrestler, Anderson Silva, who's a decent striker, but also was started off with capoeira, kind of a jiu-jitsu guy as well, used a bit more of his kicks as well. Didn't when you're in MMA, you can rely on many more things, right? Anderson Silva used a lot of things to win his fights. Very good striker, but that's not all he was. He used a lot of his kicks. He used some jiu-jitsu as well. He used some of that background. With Jake Paul, there's less to rely on. All you have to rely on is your hands, right? It's different. And with Nate Diaz, sure, he's got hands. Sure, he's got endurance. Sure, he's got cardio. How is he brought up? How did he win fights in his prime? What is he? He's a jiu-jitsu guy. He's not a boxer. Sure, he's got decent boxing, but he's a jiu-jitsu guy. When Jake Paul fought a boxer in Tommy Fury, he lost. Clearly lost. There's not even an argument to say Jake Paul won. He very clearly lost that fight. It's not even an opinion, it's a fact. Jake Paul just did much worse. He underperformed in that fight. He didn't do good. And for this fight with Nate Diaz now, it's like, okay, tune-up fight, sure, but retired, 40 years old, taking a lot of damage in his career. Also, I think I forgot to mention the fact that a lot of these guys, like Woodley, Askren, these guys fought at 170. They're welterweights. Jake Paul fights at 190. And it's even worse for Nate Diaz, who in his prime, he is a career lightweight. 155, bro. 155. It's wild to me. It's wild to me. I don't know, man. I don't know, but listen, Nate Diaz, he's got good endurance. Everybody knows that. He's got a hell of a chin on him. He's very hard to rock. He's very hard to put out as well. He's only ever been put out once in his MMA career. It's like a decade ago. It was against Josh Thompson, I'm pretty sure, by a head kick and punches. Yeah, in the second round. I'm not even reading that off. I remembered that because I saw it earlier today. And since then, he's never been put out. He had the doctor stoppage TKO with Jorge Masvidal. That doesn't really count. Jorge Masvidal did have him rocked at some points of that fight. He was clearly winning that fight still, but that was prime Masvidal, and Nate Diaz was not actually put out either. So he's got that endurance, he's got that heart, he's got that chin, and he's got that dog in him. But does he have the age, the prime level, the activeness that Jake Paul has? Not really. Not at this point in time. I already talked about it. This guy Nate Diaz, he's been focused on mainly his retirement. He's not the best boxer. He's not a super, skilled boxer. He's more of a jiu-jitsu guy. Jake Paul, he's likely gonna win this fight. Let's be real. I know a lot of people in the comments. A lot of people are saying, "Oh, Nate Diaz clearly gonna win. Nate Diaz for sure gonna win. Nate Diaz got this shit in the bag." We said the same thing about Ben Askren. Myself included. I don't know why. It was a long time ago. We said the same thing about Ben Askren. Ben Askren's going to walk through Jake Paul. Ben Askren's going to destroy Jake Paul. Now, of course, we were different back then. Times were different back then. And that's Ben Askren as well. Ben Askren is different from Nate Diaz in terms of, how skilled they are in their retirements right now. Because I think right now, if Nate Diaz and Ben Askren boxed, for sure Nate Diaz would win. I'm very confident in that if that were to ever happen. But, again, I know Nate Diaz is not Ben Askren, but we're kind of letting history repeat itself a little bit. Now, of course, Nate Diaz is not going to get sparked in round one. At least I hope not. At least I don't think it's gonna happen that way. At least not right now. But early prediction: Jake Paul by UD. Jake Paul by unanimous decision. Also, I forgot to mention, wasn't Nate Diaz? He was meant to fight Logan Paul. Remember when Darren Till left the UFC and everybody thought he was going to fight Logan Paul because it was around that same time that Logan Paul was talking about, oh, I got a new boxing opponent. I'm going to have a boxing match. I'm making a combat boxing fight. He was telling guests on his podcast, but he was blurring out the name. He was not revealing this fighter to the general public. Nobody knew who it was. Everybody assumed it was Darren Till. It turns out it wasn't, because a few days ago in an interview, or not even in an interview, was it an interview? I don't know, but Logan Paul said this publicly. He admitted that the fighter was not Darren Till. It was meant to be Nate Diaz. They were meant to have 2 fights, one in boxing and one in MMA. Last second before negotiations were meant to close, wasn't even announced to the public, but right before they were meant to come to an agreement and the negotiations, Nate Diaz, I wouldn't say pulled out, but how do you even call that? He just declined the fight, declined at the end. So, what do you know? Nate Diaz all of a sudden is now fighting the brother, Jake Paul. I don't know, man. There's definitely more money involved in this fight for sure. Bigger name value, bigger hype, bigger stage as well as his own pay-per-view. So I see why Nate Diaz pulled out of that one to take this fight as well. And it's kind of a fight that we all saw coming, that the trash talk has been there for a couple years now. So who knows? We were just waiting until Nate Diaz left the UFC for this fight to happen. And it's all just like clockwork, all how we expected it to happen. So who knows? I didn't want Nate Diaz to take this fight. I don't think he's going to win. I thought his retirement fight with Tony Ferguson was just absolutely perfect. That should have been the closure for Nate Diaz's career. But he is making money off this fight. He's making a lot of money. We already know that. We already know he's going to make a lot of money. So good for him. Good for him. I just hope that he doesn't take a lot of damage in this fight and he gets retired with a bag, with a lot of money. And early prediction, Jake Paul via unanimous decision in this comeback fight.